Well, Stephen, we looks like we got enough people to make it go.
Sure, I believe we do. If you're ready to get going, we can do that.
Yeah, it's noon. Let's call to order the Washington County Coordinating Committee for Monday, August 15th, 2022. Stephen, do you have any visitors' comments?
We didn't have anyone who signed up in advance that wanted to provide comments, but if there's anyone who's in the attendees that would like to provide a public comment, you can raise your hand right now. We'll give you just a couple of seconds to do that. We're still bringing a couple of committee members on board here. I do see Councilor Rippey's hand is up. Councilor, are you going to be sitting in? Oh, I see Mayor Truax is on here.
Mayor Truax has got it.
Got it. All right. Thank you, sir.
Okay, well, if no comments, are we ready? Introductions, roll call. Looks like the usual cast. So,
Let's do
Chris,
that.
Stephen, am I missing anybody that needs to be introduced?
Yeah, let me just run through the list if I could for the record here. So I've got for Banks, Mayor Jones. Thank you.
Here.
Mayor Beatty for Beaverton. I see you're here. Thank you. Mayor Delane, of course. Yep. Do we have Mayor Sherrado? I don't believe he's on right now. Okay. Mayor Truax, I see you're with us. Thank you. Let's see, Mayor Fender, I don't think is on just yet. Mayor Linehan, I saw you're here. Thank you. Mayor Mays. Don't see Mayor Mays yet. Just looking in our attendees. Okay, I don't think we have.
Stephen, Mayor Mays told me that Tim Rosner is going to be subbing for him today.
Okay. Okay, great. I don't see Mr. Councilor Rosner on just yet, so we'll keep an eye out for him. Thank you. Mayor Snyder.
I am here.
Thank you. And Mayor Bubenik. Thank you. Mayor Fitzgerald, I saw it there. Thank you. And Commissioner Fye. Thank you.
I'm here, Stephen.
Excellent. Okay. And then Councilor Gonzalez, I see you're on. Will you be sitting in, do you know, today for Councilor Rosenthal?
Hey, Stephen, nice to see you. I actually believe that he is tuning in today, but, as the alternate here to do a trusty job.
Excellent.
Until he arrives.
All right. Thanks, sir. And I see Matt Freitag with ODOT with us. Thank you, Matt. And do we have someone from Port of Portland today? I believe we do. All right. And then I think Tara O'Brien, are you with us today? Okay. Looks like we don't have our TriMet. Okay. All right. I think we're good to go, sir. Thank you.
Tara's joining.
Oh, there you are. Thanks, Tara.
Here now.
Perfect. Thank you.
Cool. Sounds like we made it through. Do I have a motion to accept the meeting summary for July 18th?
I move that we accept the meeting summary for July.
Motion by Mayor Jones. Do I have a second?
I second.
I'm going to give that one to Mayor Schneider for the second. Okay. Motion second. All in favor, please say, wait, further discussion. Any adjustments, modifications? Everybody's happy? Seeing none? Okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any in opposition? Okay. Nobody abstaining? Okay. Looks like we got an unanimous on that one, Stephen.
Excellent. Thank you. Okay.
So we also need to talk about an alternate rep for our TPAC for cities. So I think Mayor Callaway, you're kind of the guy in charge of coordinating our voting between the mayors for a rep. So you kind of want to introduce this and kind of talk us about how we're going to get from here to there.
You bet. And I see that Councilor Rosner has his hand up. So I think he just is acknowledging that he's here for Mayor Mays.
Great.
And then Councilor
Yeah,
Rosenthal,
I'm just letting people know I'm here.
Okay, good. I do see Councilor Rosenthal is here, but Councilor Gonzalez, congratulations on your marriage and your wedding and all of that. You know, so I'm glad that I'm glad you were on screen so we could all just yay. And I don't think there's a Zoom wedded bliss reaction. So just assume that our smiles and claps equals that. So congratulations to you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, it was beautiful. I'm very happy. Appreciate it.
Good. Okay, so as the mayor of the largest city, the charter says that I'm supposed to, you know, lead the voting process. And so this time it's for the alternate for TPAC. TPAC is the technical group that supports JPAC, and TPAC stands for Transportation Policy Advisory or Alternatives Committee. Sorry, Alternatives Committee. It meets one Friday per month, plus typically the Wednesday and a joint work session prior to TPAC. So we are filling the alternate position that's been vacated by Julia Hayduck, who was with the city of Sherwood, who in the spirit of Cornelius stealing staff from Hillsborough, I believe it was Staten that stole Julia from from her previous role, and she's now the city manager down there. So we are and I think we anticipate a couple of nominations from mayors. And so this is for the alternate position. I think most of us are aware that Don Odermont, who is in the current TPAC position, is retiring at the end of the year. And so this does not mean that the alternate automatically becomes the permanent, or I guess the lead, come next year. Although that there is some history to that, but this is just for the alternate position, and then we will deal with that vacancy in the lead when that opens up. So is there any questions about that so far? Have I kind of muddled that? Lacey, I see your face. So was that a good look or a bad look?
Yeah, I just, for clarity, I think, when I'm thinking about the alternate position, because historically, most of the time the alternate becomes the representative. I think we either can have a gentleman's agreement that we're going to vote for that, not that this isn't an automatic go for that position to replace Odermont. Because if it is a agreement that it's going to replace Odermont, who I'm going to choose as the alternate is going to look very different to me. And so I know we can't handcuff future mayors. And if this vote happens in January, there'll be like 4 of you not on the call joining us then. But, I'm going to throw a nomination in the ring because I'm concerned that a future set of mayors might decide that the alternate's automatically the replacement.
Good. And I think that we will, especially since this is so close to when we would select Don's or new lead. I think that from my position, I see this as two separate selections, two separate processes. So, but that's just me, and probably not even 2 cents worth, as Mary Truax would say. So, Tara.
I just wanted to add to your description, Mayor, that in light of the RTP update underway, there are a few additional TPAC meetings that have been happening, much like you've all experienced with JPAC and the additional prep meetings. I'm a TPAC member, as is Chris Defenbach, and there's just some additional time commitment in light of the RTP update that's underway, since there are not often separate work groups going on. So plus with the meetings you noted, plus some additional time, but I'm sure folks have people in mind with that additional time commitment in mind, but just wanted to add that in for everyone's awareness.
I kind of wanted to keep that a secret, because otherwise we'd have nobody who would want to do it. All right.
It's a lot, but really fun.
Thank you, though, for that clarity. All right. So what we'll do is I believe that we have then, Mayor Bubenik and Mayor Beatty both have somebody that they'll bring forward, and we'll give them a few minutes, 2-3 minutes, just to kind of share some of their background, either, work experience as well as, within the county. And I think also, as is appropriate, some of their philosophy or approach, I guess, to our regional and county transportation issues. And I think then if there's other questions that mayors have, they can ask after we've heard from both of them. So if possible, could we, Mayor Beatty, Mayor Bubenik, you each have an individual. Are there any other mayors that have somebody they'd like to bring forward? All right, and then seeing none, Mayor Bubenik, Mayor Beatty, do you want to bring the names of your nominees forward? And then we'll just ask them that they can be promoted to panelists.
All right. I'm going to go ahead and nominate Mike McCarthy of the city of Tualatin.
Nominating Gene Biggs from the city of Beaverton.
Okay, very good. Thank you. And I believe that Mike is joining us from vacation. And Gene is probably joining us from Beaverton, where every day working for the city is like a vacation.
That's in our promotional material, so I'm glad you didn't miss that.
Nice, nice. Well, that was the best segue I could do. So thanks both of you for joining us and your willingness to serve our county and our cities in this way. And so, and I don't, it doesn't matter who goes first, but I just invite both of you to go ahead and share some of your background and kind of some of your philosophy maybe and priorities as you look at this position.
You want to go first, Frank?
Sure, go ahead. I'll just introduce Mike McCarthy. Mike has done a tremendous job here in Tualatin. He has spearheaded the Tualatin Moving Forward bond program, where it was a 10-year program of multiple projects. We're going to have them all done within 5 years, and it's been done on time, on budget. And the comment I hear the most from our residents about Mike is that he is an engineer who listens when asked for improvements here in the city. He's super flexible. He listens to folks and actually delivers solutions that residents really like, enjoy, and have participated in, versus creating something in his own mind and not really giving credence to the public. So with that, I'll turn over to Mike.
Well, thank you. So my name is Mike McCarthy. I actually grew up in the New York area, moved to Oregon right out of college, actually. I've been working in the transportation planning and traffic engineering realm for about 25 years now, including about 15 in the Portland area. I've been working as a principal transportation engineer for Tualatin for about 4 years, and worked for Tigard for about 11 years before that. And my experience has always been kind of right in the middle between engineering and planning, both in the working at the details of how to make a network work and working at the bigger picture of what's going to work out best overall. How do we really represent, our whole community? I think as Mayor Bubenik mentioned, one of my biggest priorities is listening. And I think listening to each of you as agencies about what's really important to you about whatever issues will end up coming across the TPAC table. And I'd say for my philosophy, I really believe in a balanced transportation system that works well for all modes, whether it's driving, freight, walking, biking, transit, and then designing communities that really function well to the extent that we'd be involved with that. So I think I'm really wanting to listen to everyone and really work towards a balanced transportation network that works really well to address everyone's needs. And that by doing that, that'll actually be our best way to work to counter the effects of climate change, and then promote economic development and make it a safer network, and really just make our transportation system work best for everybody.
Great, thanks, Mike. Gene, thank you for joining us, and the next few minutes are yours.
Let me do a quick introduction of Gene.
Please, thank you. I apologize.
Yeah, no problem. I think most of you know the city of Beaverton has been through a transition in the last couple of years, going from strong mayor to council manager form of government hasn't been easy for this mayor that started running in one form of government and started serving in another. It's not been the easiest on our staff that have had to adjust to, instead of speaking to one voice, they're speaking to 7, and they're trying to look in the middle and find the best solutions to come out the other end. Jean has been one of those constant, steady voices through our entire transition. As a mayor, I like to surround myself by people that tell me what I need to hear, not what I want to hear. I know some of you are laughing because you know me really well and you might think that is not true, but I don't think creating a team around you that believes exactly how you believe is the right approach. Jean is kind of that steady voice that pushes me to think about regional government, about Metro, about the county, how our transportation needs are interconnected between what Portland is doing, or our neighbors Tigard and Hillsborough, and our county that surrounds us in a lot of our areas. And sometimes they're in the middle of our city. So having a staff member that has that wide regional view of what's good for the county and Metro is also good for Beaverton, and making sure that our voice is at the table, but not in a way that is overwhelming, but kind of in that steady staff voice. I could have taken this time to talk about where she came from and her background. Every single one of our engineers and people that work in transportation have a great education, came from somewhere awesome. When I think about the future of what our transportation is, I think about Jean, the voice in the room that's going to bring everyone together, figure out the middle of the path, and get it going. And I know you're not an engineer, you correct me all the time.
Thank you. That was a very nice introduction. Thank you, Mayor Beatty. I'll just be really brief because it's hard to follow on what the mayor just so nicely said about me. Like Mike, I have also been at this for about 25 years. I joined City of Beaverton about 3 years ago, but I've spent my entire career here in Portland. Those of you who know me know that I spent about 20 years at City of Portland, had a short stint as a consultant before I came back to the public sector, which is where I feel like I really thrive. And transportation's been throughout my whole career, doing both sort of planning and capital projects. I kind of know both sides of that part of the work. I think, you know, hearing Tara chime in a little bit on the RTP, I really think looking ahead to this next year, that's the big thing happening at the TPAC table. And you all are seeing all the pieces and parts come forward to you over these next few months. You already have been talking about it. So that sort of policy RTP work, I would be really excited to be engaged around the table with all of our other regional partners on that. And there's also all sort of the federal funding resource discussion that's so key to the work that we do and all we want to achieve out here. So I'll just say this, which is before I came to Washington County and was talking with other people that have done work within the county, I heard something really that struck me, which is that Washington County does so well at the regional table when they stick together. And I see that, having sat through your meetings here for several years now, I see how that works. And you know, I've really enjoyed just the time that I've had here working with my peers as part of WCCC TAC and even at the TPAC table and those workshops. So that's something that, you know, I think is core to the job, is really kind of finding that consensus and bringing forward the thoughts and opinions of the Washington County Coordinating Committee. So thanks.
Perfect. Thank you, Jean. So for mayors or any of the panelists, any questions that are either specific maybe to your city's issues or maybe just your own philosophy? And anybody's welcome to ask questions, or I guess a reminder, and I see your hand, Mayor Truax, I'll get you in a second. A reminder that it's just mayors within the metro boundaries, you know, will be voting. So, you know, Mayor Jones and Mayor Lenahan can ask the really difficult questions, I guess, because you don't have to vote. But anyway, so it'll be the mayors within the boundaries. So that basically means all of us except for Mayor Jones and Lenahan. So Mayor Truax, go ahead.
I just want to make sure that our candidates here understand or have an idea that there are mayors in this room that really want to make sure that programs are followed or considered, sometimes without regard to the home base. This may sound somewhat impolite, but if we have people that are looking at these particular projects that don't take off their, say, Forest Grove hat and start looking at that from a Forest Grove perspective rather than a regional, we're going to end up with some problems. And I just want to avoid that and make sure that that we're aware that that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for people that are able to put on a regional hat and discuss the regional programs. Not by any extent am I saying totally surrender your city interests, but be able to incorporate the needs for those groups or those cities that might also need some transportation help. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, Mayor Lanahan.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Callaway. So yeah, you're right. We, Mayor Jones and I do not get to vote, and that's fine. But I know that we still are at the table and we have a voice. And I think it's really important that while, you know, Metro needs to move forward and do the work that they do for the communities and the people within those areas, I think it's also really important to remember that our smaller communities out here in Western Washington County truly feel the impact of the growth that's happening in the metropolitan area. And we also need to be, as you all sit at these tables and make, you know, decisions, they do impact our communities. And as you move forward, you know, I would hope that you would, in the back of your mind, keep in mind that, geez, you know, what we do here will have an impact on the smaller communities outside of the metro area. And it's extremely important to me that that is, you know, communicated to you all, but also, you know, definitely keep that in the front of your mind as you move forward. Thanks.
Thank you, Mayor. And Chair Delane, do I have time for, okay, go ahead, Councilor Rosenthal.
Yeah, I just want to say I appreciate the comment from Mayor Linehan. And although I think most of us on Metro Council, certainly I do, I realize that the impacts of the Portland metropolitan area go way beyond the boundaries of Metro, whether it's Newburgh, whether it's Canby, whether it's other parts of Clackamas County, or whether it's North Plains. So I appreciate her comments, and we will try and keep that in mind.
Very good, thank you.
To your point, Steve, we are running low on time, so maybe we wrap it up after Tim's comment.
All right, Councilor Rosner, and then we'll wrap it up.
Yeah, if I'd known that we were short on time, I wouldn't have raised my hand, but I just wanted to pound on that nail that we were just talking about, that the impacts do go beyond our county. Sherwood feels that immensely with all the traffic that comes out of Yamhill County trying to get to the work centers. So having that big picture view and where our people live, where they work, whether they're inside the metro area or not, and how they get to and from those locations and commute, I think is really important to have that big picture view. I'll leave it at that.
Very good, thank you. Any other burning questions? Okay, then any other burning last comments, I guess, from, you know, either Gene or Mike?
I just want to say, though, to our staff that are about to go through a live voting process, us mayors are used to it. I want to thank you both for volunteering to serve in this role. I know it could be nerve-wracking, but all of us think very highly of both of you. So no matter who represents us, I'm very confident we are going to have an amazing staff member. And the mayor's collegiality among how we build consensus, how we do things together, even when we have different views, I think we're going to we're going to get a great outcome here. So thank you to both for accepting the nomination. But before we go through this, I just want to let you know, we understand it's nerve-wracking to go through a vote.
And along those lines, I was just going to send out an email to the voting mayors, to all of you, ask you to just hit reply to me and Stephen Roberts. That way we'll have a written record of who voted, if that's okay. Otherwise, we can do a roll call.
And Mayor Callaway, this is Tim. I'm here as the alternate because Keith's not here today. So I'm assuming under the bylaws, I can vote as a mayor because you keep saying mayor. So I just want to make sure that's clear.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, and Stephen, the alternate is permitted to vote, correct?
Yes, and really there is no formal process for this. It's really a process kind of determined between the cities, how to designate the cities of Washington County reps. So I'll defer to you, Mayor, in terms of how you want to take that vote. Yep.
So do we want to do a roll call, or would you rather do the email?
Stephen, I'd lean in on that we're already over time for this significantly.
Okay.
Maybe we can take this offline,
So we'll do the email. I'll send the email out. Sorry, Chair, for taking up too much time.
No, that's okay. We budgeted it one way and it went another. Sometimes that happens, right?
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Okay, that takes us into the topic of RFAA and the trail bond project funding sources. So we're getting close in September for JPAC recommendations, the RFFA and trail projects. At the August meeting, JPAC members will discuss priorities leading to the development of a recommendation for action in September. At our last meeting, we considered several different ways to prioritize the RFA trail project, and based on JPAC inputs, Metro is using the scoring that prioritizes safety and equity as a baseline. So that's come up with this very nice, super complicated, multi-rainbow colored matrix we have now for us here. Basically, it's based on these priorities. We need to identify for the coordinating committee and our representatives, what do we think is important, and be able to provide that direction to the JPAC reps so they can best represent us at the Thursday meeting. There are 4 options in our packet. Chris can try to direct us through this maze. Chris, you want to pick it up at there?
I can do this, although this screen, you might be better off looking at the one in your packet because this only looks at half of it. This doesn't show you this screenshot doesn't show you the full Excel spreadsheet, I believe. It only looks at half of it, right?
And, and there's so many pages and so many
pages. So yeah,
Chris, maybe I'm going to truncate this. Maybe I'll truncate this a whole lot after I was thinking and reading through the stuff.
Right. I can just do that really simple. Why don't you stop sharing? Then people can look at their packets because it's kind of complicated to share it. So basically there are 4 options, and they are also described in your JPAC packet. And they're all based on an equity safety baseline, and that one, and then from that there are 3 additional options. So they're called equity safety baseline, which is the result of the JPAC discussions from last month. And in that one, for example, Washington County gets quite a few, 7 of the 9 projects funded, and a good chunk of the funding requested, but it does not, by just looking at equity safety, it does not pick up priorities that other coordinating committees identified. The other is example 1, and that one makes some adjustments to the bond projects. This is the one where the Brookwood Parkway project goes from $4.5 million to $1 million funding and stays that through the other couple of options. And in this one, Washington County gets 8 projects funded and 19% of the revenue. And a couple of the key project that is not funded in this one is Allen Boulevard. And we know that this option also does not support Clackamas and Multnoma's priorities of Sandy and Willamette Drive. It's the third option. They call it option 2, example number 2. This one funds 6 of the 9 projects in Washington County with 16% of the revenue. The projects that don't get funded in this one include the Fano Creek Trail, which is the next highest ranked one that isn't funded, the Tiger Lake alignment study, the Allen Boulevard project, and then there's three or four other projects, 1, 2, 3 other projects. And with this option, there is 1.46 million left to be reallocated, because it's hard, as you can imagine, to make these, the project requests are kind of lumpy, and there's one bottom line. So some of them go a little over, some of them go a little under in terms of the work. That option 2 does fund Multnomah County and Clackamas County's priorities with Willamette Drive and Sandy. And the reason I bring this up is because when we can pick, you guys can pick the one you like the best, but it's got at the JPAC table, there's a lot of other votes coming forward. So it's good to know what others are considering prioritizing. And then the other option, they call it example 3, is one that actually funds all of the projects requested by Washington County. So it sounds like a winner. The Brookwood Parkway still has the haircut of 1 million out of the 4.5 million. And that's not, I mean, but other than that, this option funds others, the other projects. It doesn't fund, it funds the Clackamas County's priority, Willamette Falls Drive. It does not fund Multnomah County's priority and Sandy Boulevard. I would note, though, as many people have, that between Multnomah County and Portland, it's still at 71% of the money going to Multnomah County and Portland. So a question is sort of how do, they still get quite a bit, even if in option 3. So that's kind of the lay of the land. And as you know, those who've been through this before, there's always some push and pull. Well, what can you do with this money? What are your options? And I should also note that the revenue that is assumed to be received for the regional flexible funds is still an estimate. We don't know exactly yet how much exactly we're going to get from the federal government for this funding. So this is an estimate. So there's a little bit of a margin of error in terms of how much is available. So I'll leave it at that and let you all talk among yourselves about the project, particularly the ones that aren't funded, and what you most want your JPAC reps to see what you can do.
So I'm going to call on Jason after I throw down the gauntlet a little bit. Being the experienced member at our table, we have taken a bath on this as far as regional distribution for years. And I would hope that our reps could convey that in probably a nicer tone than I do, that our 9 projects represent still less than a proportion of our region's amount. 50% would represent all of Multnomah County and city of Portland, if you're looking at population. And then we should be, a significant portion thereof, not 33%. So I'm a little grumpy about any projects that continue to pour and funnel the money into Portland instead of giving us some regional equity out here. So that's my comments as a chair from a longstanding member, having worked through this in a long time. Jason?
I have the same concerns, and frankly, I think we should be pushing them if it's going to go towards their, what is, Chris, you described it as option 2 that they're likely to move forward with. Is that correct?
I can't say what's likely. I know, based on what I know, I'm just looking at how many of the priority projects that were identified by the other coordinating committees are funded and what the TPAC discussion was. But I don't know what's going to come up at JPAC any further
Well, I agree with Mayor DeLynn that we should be pushing them to fund all our projects, and I don't like the way that this is structured from a regional perspective and our share of it. With that said, I think getting, especially given the scoring that happened in all of the different methods, I think not funding the Fano Creek Trail is a big mistake. If it can't be fully funded, it can be nearly fully funded with the 1.4, 1.45 million that's left over. I think we should be pushing for that. If that's going to be how this goes, that's the project that fell off. I think that had the highest scores. That from just a within Washington County perspective, I think that's also the right thing to do. I think there's certainly a case that can be made for Allen Boulevard on that front, and I'm sure Mayor Beatty will make that point. I would also point out that THPRD, which primarily serves the greater Beaverton areas, got a large allocation, I think itself, that's scheduled in this. And so that would be what I would share and ask for that consideration.
Thanks, Jason. Mayor Beatty?
First, I just want to echo Mayor Snyder on the Fano Creek Trail. I think it's a trail of regional importance. It spends a good chunk of the year flooded. People aren't able to access it. And even though the flooding is majority on the Tigard side, Beaverton residents are greatly impacted by this. And it really is going to take some creative problem solving. And neither one of our cities or our special district park have the resources to do it alone. And when we're talking about not just equity as far as people, but our climate goals and having people ride bikes and getting outside, like Fano Creek needs to be on that list. So I just want to echo Jason Snyder's point here, but also adding the climate. This is a major transportation corridor that is unusable. I just rode last week, it's still flooded in August. So I think if you guys want to have a little powwow and invite people to come see it, I'm sure Jason and I would love to host you under the very unsafe bridge. Of course, I'm going to advocate for my own project on Allen Boulevard. It is the center of safety and equity. The fact that it rated so low, it mind boggles me. I think the other thing to consider with the redirect on Highway 217, this is becoming one of the only ways to get into Beaverton through our lowest socioeconomic neighborhoods, through our neighborhood has the most communities of color anywhere in Beaverton. This road is not designed for the throughput that it is doing. And we're not even asking people to fix it. We're just asking for planning money so we could do it the right way. We can bring communities into the conversation. Transforming a road like this should have everyone at the table making that decision. And with the excess overruns in each category, this is a mild request for funding to help us create a road. When we're talking about all of these projects, one of the things we always hear is there's not enough planning, there's not enough community input. We think we know what's best for the road. Instead of just asking for what the city thinks we know best, we're asking for money to make sure people's voices are heard. So please consider that. Fano Creek, Allen Boulevard, really important to us. Also, THPRD's 50% of their membership is outside the city limits. It's mostly unincorporated. I know that's hard to believe.
Not for anyone that's seen the map of Beaverton. Oh, Jason, I made you laugh. Good. Hey, other questions, comments? Otherwise, Councilor Gonzalez is hoping to get a minute. With Garrett here, did Councilor Gonzalez get pushed back to?
No, I'm here. I'm in the.
Oh, where is he now?
We had you and then we lost you.
Oh, hi everyone. Yeah, this is Juan Carlos. Well, first and foremost, I appreciate the opportunity to make a comment. I am one of the JPAC Metro councilors, and obviously share and representing Washington County with Councilor Rosenthal. I obviously I think we're all in agreement that the West Side deserves its fair share of regional funds. And I think from the very beginning that the WCCC has been incredibly strategic with the projects that were submitted in the first place. I mean, we when I say we, I mean Washington County and the cities in the county, submitted projects that are our top priorities across the board. And I think that in general is a really great strategy, and you've made my job very easy. Obviously we're all, I would like to express that we're all in agreement that I think that the bare minimum is for Washington County to have all of its projects funded. It's been something that I've spoken about extensively with my staff and with some of the people on this call as well, representing different jurisdictions. And it's something that I feel if we continue to push, it will be important. My staff share with me, just in terms of kind of explaining the process a little bit from my perspective, the maze, the chart, that was released, it was much more of a technical analysis, running it through the models, trying to find a baseline language for these projects in different areas to communicate to each other. But it's very much a starting point. The next point is to hear from the coordinating committees and from communities to make a much better decision. So I don't want to underestimate the influence that this body has in communicating, not only through the elected level, but through the staff and the technical level. So just to kind of wrap up my thoughts, what I will share is that at JPAC, and with my colleagues on JPAC, I'll work really, really hard to make sure that the scenario 3 and any scenario that puts Washington County in the best position forward. And I will try and echo as many of the statements and comments that folks have made here today. They're statements that I personally believe as well. I know that there is that staff are working, Metro staff are working with the city of Hillsborough on the Brookwood project, specifically with PD. And I'd love the opportunity to learn a little bit more about your perspective, Mayor Callaway, because I know it's the one that would go from the 4 to the 1. But nonetheless, just wanted to share that perspective. And if folks want to talk to me one-on-one before the official decision is made in a few months, happy to talk, but want the county to get as much money as possible.
Thanks,
Just
Juan Carlos.
bring us the money.
And they can't do a sub-regional allocation, right? We've already been down that road. We've gotten very clear direction from the state that we can't just cut it up by population and divvy it out. We do need to do analysis that is in support of it. But I think Juan Carlos's point about that we all did our homework. We submitted high quality, regionally supported, locally supported projects, and that we just want to get a reasonable and fair share of the regional flex funds to do that. So Councillor Fye or Steve, you represent us at that table. Commissioner Fye, do you guys have any questions? Anything we can help clarify for you?
I don't. And I will tell you that, from what I understand so far, our preference being option 3 may not have enough partner votes. Those partners being outside of, who we're looking at, on our Zoom screen. But I will strongly push for option 3. Part of the problem with option 3 is it does not include Sandy Boulevard in Multnomah County, which is big for them. And then it doesn't include Willamette Falls Drive for Clackamas County, which is, their big ask. So one thing I would implore is anybody that can come to JPAC and speak, for 3 minutes to talk about the importance, the projects. I think that's helpful. But also if you have contact with folks who are, in either other voting partners or from other counties, by all means, reach out to them too, because, the important work is done outside the meeting and before the vote. As Councilor Gonzalez mentioned, the formal vote from Metro isn't until September, but what JPAC decides has a big impact on it. And so we will continue to push for option 3, falling back on option 2. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And Councilor Gonzalez, in terms of Brookwood Parkway kind of getting the short end, it is what it is. So I think that's part of the challenge. With Metro not being a road agency, it's easy to say, well, put up a rapid flashing beacon, but that's hard to do across, a 6-lane road like that. And so, we'll continue to, to focus on good, realistic examples, even if it takes longer. And that's it for me. And I see Chris has her hand up, Chair. But also, I want to
I
make
see
sure
Chris.
Leticia has her
Chris
piece.
waving in case the commission.
I just wanted to correct that the example 3 scenario, which does fund the most of the Washington County projects, also funds Clackamas County's top priority, which is the Willamette Falls Drive. And it still allocates 20% of the funding to Multnomah County for that small, East Multnomah County, for that small area. I think it's, I want to say 9% of the population, but it just doesn't cover their priority project, which is Sandy. So I just want to make that clear that, I think that's it does fund something that Clackamas County's priority is. So yeah, number 3 is the strongest for Washington County.
Thank you, Chris. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Was it just me, or did you get copied on it? I thought I got an email that said they'd also found some other money for Sandy Boulevard, so they were willing to take a little cut on Sandy Boulevard.
I did not get that email. So you're
okay. I'll dig through my email and send it on to Chris, but I thought they said they got another alternate source that enabled them to not need as much money for Sandy. So I'll see if I can
they originally asked for 20 million for Sandy. 20 million out of the 65 million available. So they cut that back to 6 million. So if they found more money for the 6 million, that's news to me. But they did scale they originally asked for 20 million.
And I would highlight that the to Mayor Beatty's point, if you look at the equity maps, a significant part of Sandy Boulevard, which cuts diagonally through the Portland area, is not colored or highlighted. It's at the end where it's down in the city center, and it's out when it gets further out. But the whole center section of Sandy, a significant portion of it, unlike TV Highway, Cornell, Allen Boulevard, several of ours, which are just surrounded with equity issues for if it's ESL, it's equity, it's income. So I think there's a strong opportunity there. So Chris, do you have anything else? I think we got everybody's Commissioner Fye. I don't know if she had any questions or comments.
Yeah, I don't necessarily have any questions, but I think I agree with Mayor Callaway. I think if you all can make time to come and testify for JPACs, sign up when they have a testimony, that will be really helpful to all of us here, not just to Mayor Callaway and I, but also Councilor Gonzalez and Rosenthal to advocate. I think what we should perhaps discuss today at this meeting is, while option 3 might not be winnable for us, and option 2 seems winnable, and then we can tackle on asking the leftover money. And I think, with what Mayor Beatty said, Allen Boulevard being a priority, Mayor Snyder, what can you do with the leftover money of the 1.4 million if we subtract what would require for Allen Boulevard? How do we meet the rest of the funding that's required for Fano Creek? I think that might be a helpful conversation for all of us to engage in terms of how do we meet the rest of the funding. I think what's allocated right now, Chris, correct me, and I think Chris and I had a conversation multiple times about this, but 1.6 million, and what's at the table for JPAC for option 2 is 1.4 million. And Allen Boulevard requires about $700,000. So then that leaves the rest. And how do we meet what's missing?
So Commissioner Fye, you're assuming Allen Boulevard then should be prioritized above the Fano Creek Trail project in that sort of line of thinking?
I think it might be, how do we divide that money is the better question here, I think,
Okay.
between the two.
And I will not walk back from my gauntlet of options that include 33% of the regional area getting 24% or 16 or 19% of the funding. Teeters on an atrocity. And we have continuously taken that kind of beating at the table. And I don't think it's right.
So what strategy wise, I guess I don't know the politics of the Metro Council quite as well, but if Councilors Rosenthal and Vice Chair Gonzalez refuse to support this once it gets to the Metro Council to vote, is that enough votes to force it to fail? Probably not. Is that? I mean, I'm just getting real tactical here.
No, that's good, Jason.
Mayor Snyder, sorry, Chair Delaney, if I can speak.
Yes, jump in.
All right, thank you so much. I apologize for jumping in. Well, the short answer is no. That would not be enough. And the way that Metro's relationship with JPAC is that Metro would have to vote to oppose and send it back to JPAC with a recommendation, and then only JPAC could make realistic change to bring it back to Metro Council. So, I mean, if we're looking at kind of the political calculus side of it, I mean, it'd be like, if there's really strong support to a certain option and we send it back to them, what's going to change the mind for I hope that makes sense.
And I would throw in that the argument about the regional equity, having the money spread, so it actually won out to the point where we actually did a sub-regional allocation several cycles back, and then we got our hands slapped for literally doing a sub-regional allocation that it was literally by the numbers. Every county got the percentage, and then the coordinating committees figured out which projects got it, and that was actually override. So we do need to use some form of balance between the political calculus and an analysis to come up with a distribution. But Mayor Callaway? Unmute.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Commissioner Fye and Mayor Snyder, your conversation made me think that if is Allen prioritized then over Fano Creek if it were to get the full amount. And so then it made me think, well, what if we took the 1.4 million and just divided it out? Because Fano Creek is a $1.6 million ask, and if they get $1 million of that 1.4, then that would equal 60%. If Allen Boulevard got 400,000 toward the 700,000, which would be the balance of that 1.4 million remaining on our list, that equals 57%. So, I don't know if that's a more equitable division, so that each jurisdiction is getting approximately close to 60%, of their request. And that way it's not like one is being prioritized over the other, but then neither one is getting, what they need. So I don't know if that's, just kind of making it so that neither one can be effectively supported out of that 1.4 million, or if that's a good option. But I think that might address Commissioner Fye's question about the distribution without, prioritizing necessarily one over the other.
And Mayor Callaway, that assumes that JPAC is willing to assign all that left over to Washington County, which I guess with the way this is going, I just wonder whether that's a dubious assumption too on our part.
And I don't know historically when I was at the table or Denny or others, we sometimes we use that policy and say we've come up with the math, but now we got to actually use the political end that we are. If you're sending 70% or 73% of the project money to Portland Metropolitan in Portland and Multnomah County, which is 20% more than their populous fair share, then you make the argument that you need to make up the difference by giving the balance of unallocated to Washington County to get closer to regional equity. So I don't know, we're gonna have to see where this goes. Commissioner Fye, do you want us to, those of us that can, to call in this month and next month? Is that what you're suggesting for?
Yeah, and before we end this conversation, I think Juan Carlos has his hand raised. I'd like to hear.
Thank you. Thank you for that recognition. Juan Carlos, did you have something else?
Mayor, actually, that was a leftover from the last time I spoke up. Thanks. Thank you, Commissioner Fye.
Thank you. Steve, Mayor Callaway.
Yeah, thank you. So RUFA is federal dollars. Is there a tipping point at which, like for the Allen project, if they get too much money, it becomes then a federalized project, and that, or is the threshold well below that? So that's not something that would complicate, that Allen Boulevard project. And I don't necessarily expect anybody would have an answer immediately, but that's just a question. And maybe if that can be answered prior to Thursday, that'd be great.
From my understanding, a lot of times the planning isn't held against the same when the project is federalized. And so what we'll just need to do is have staff research that. But my experience with federalizing our other projects is that planning is often looked at differently than bringing money in for cap construction.
Thank you.
Okay. Chris, anything else? Otherwise, I'm going to move on to regional high capacity. Thanks, everybody. Good discussion on that. A little long, but we needed it. Regional high capacity, review and provide input on Metro's high capacity transit strategy, work plan, and policy considerations for the 2023 Regional Transportation Plan. This includes updates to, yes, RD. Is it Ali? How do you, Holmquist will give us an introduction to this work, setting the stage for our future discussions at upcoming RTP policy workshops, which everybody loves, and positioning us to be well informed to weigh in during this process. You have the floor.
Thank you so much. Can you all hear me okay?
Sound great.
Great. I'm so I just noticed my camera's doing something a little funky, so I apologize that it's not coming through, but I'm glad that you can all hear me. And yes, it's Ali Holmquist. Perfect. Thank you so much. I'm with Metro, and I am here to present on the high capacity transit strategy update, which is a key policy focus area for the 2023 Regional Transportation Plan, which may be where you've heard it before. Next slide, please. Thank you. So first, before we get into the details, I just want to talk a little bit about what we mean when we say high capacity transit, because there is some federal guidance and there are some current definitions in the Regional Transportation Plan. But at the core, it's a type of transit that moves a lot of people quickly and often. It can generally move people over longer distances because of its speed, and tends to be convenient and reliable for people to use. So as you can see on the screen, we're talking about Max Light Rail, West Commuter Rail, and then also Rapid Bus. So there's the Vine in Vancouver, and then also the Emerald Express in Eugene that you might have heard of before. And that usually includes larger, longer buses that have more capacity for people, stations that have improvements for faster and more efficient boarding, like bringing the curb right up to the doors. And then also a combination of improvements to the street that allow the bus to have its own space to run and or priority that helps it run faster and more reliably. And so together, these features make it a little bit different than some other modes you might have heard of that aren't included in this definition. So that includes express bus, bus on shoulder, better bus, or even just regular frequent bus or streetcar. So it's just a little bit different than those modes. But all of these modes are part of our transit network. This is the spectrum that illustrates the classifications for that transit network. And I just bring this up to show how, when we're talking about high capacity transit, we're talking about how these different modes move progressively more people over longer distances until the highest form of high capacity transit, as we're talking about today. And I wanted to mention too, our work in 2018 really focused on updating the 2009 high capacity transit plan, very focused on light rail, which was the key policy area at that time, as well as identifying enhanced transit concept corridors, which you can see in the middle of the screen here. And those were really that better bus I mentioned, where for very congested corridors, priority treatments could provide improvements for reliability.
Allie?
And so, oh, I'm sorry.
Just as a question, so does
Yeah.
like division count for high capacity transit with the new bigger buses?
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for flagging that. Oh, and I'm sorry, I just switched out of the wrong thing here. Having a little trouble seeing the chats. And division transit, actually, that goes right into the next portion of the screen that I was going to talk about. The middle section here, where you can actually see where this rapid bus rapid transit is. There are two types.
Am I on
there
a different
is.
slide? Am I the only one? Because I still have just a whole screen full of buses and trains.
Oh, I'm sorry. Teresa, can you go to the next slide? I forgot to say next slide.
Thank you.
Apologies for that. This is the slide I was hoping that you were looking at. So this is the transit spectrum I was talking about, with the left to right, looking at, moving more people over distances. And so the middle here where the rapid bus is, that we have the corridor based and the regular rapid bus. And that's sort of the difference between something like division, which has some priority, but doesn't have, a full dedicated lane or a lot of dedicated lane space, falls into more of the corridor definition. But really the reason I highlight this middle section is that this rapid bus is something that we haven't focused on in a policy area, and it's a gap we've identified to focus on in this work for this update, and really a key opportunity for us. And because of division transit that's coming online in September, and as well as I already mentioned the Vine that's been around for a little while and expanding to Mill Plain as well, and we have planning for TV Highway and 82nd Avenue in the works, it's really the right time to be thinking about rapid bus and to be planning for what's next, where there are other opportunities, to think about what corridors have opportunity in a coordinated and holistic way, and thinking about what an integrated, complete system looks like for high capacity transit that includes rapid bus, even thinking about connections to Vancouver. Next slide, please. And then I just want to talk a little bit about why it's so important for meeting our regional goals. So high capacity transit is the backbone of the 2040 growth concept, which has a vision of connecting the central city and regional centers like Hillsborough, for instance, through high capacity transit, linking people to hubs of activity and supporting the dense development envisioned in the concept. And high capacity transit is critical to implementing the RTP investment priorities supporting that blueprint concept, as well as the goals of our climate smart strategy and our regional transit strategy vision, which is highlighted in the blue box to the right. And that's because, it is frequent and it includes all these other features that I've mentioned that makes it convenient and reliable to use. It's a more viable, affordable alternative to driving than some other types of transit because of those features, and provides people with transportation options that help us minimize congestion as we grow, and helps us stay more equitable for people who rely on transit, which includes people with low incomes, people of color, people with disabilities, people who are older and younger, and others. And then also fewer cars on the road leads to less air pollution, really tied to our climate goals, as well as more reliability for moving people and goods that are still on the road in cars as well. And so high capacity transit is a critical element of helping become the region that we envisioned in these foundational plans. And it yields some of the highest outcomes towards those goals because it moves so many people and tends to move them farther as well. And so what we want to do in this work is really build from that past visioning to set ourselves up to capitalize on an opportunity to rethink what that network looks like. Especially now you've heard Elliot talk a little bit about emerging trends, I believe, and Grant about Forward Together, just around some of the current challenges we are facing amidst still recovering from COVID-19. This is really a way that we can best think about bringing back ridership, also provide in a way that provides the greatest community benefits, as some of the need in the central city has waned a little bit, and we're still seeing stability in essential destinations and community places. And then by doing this work, we're actually envisioning a stronger backbone for the transit network to set the stage for future work to look at solutions for improving connections to it. And that's really, long story short, why this is a policy focus area. Next slide, please. And so where we are today, I mentioned the two plans on the left of this graphic here in the past, but there's also a lot of work going on right now we can leverage. So I mentioned Forward Together already. We're using some of the analysis for that near-term service planning work to feed into our evaluation. And then also as they begin phase 2, looking at needs longer term, they'll have an opportunity to do the same thing with some of the work that we're doing now. I know that both Metro and TriMet are doing updates to the transit-oriented development plans. And so that's really looking at markets for transit-oriented development, really related work. And then we also know that SMART's updating the transit master plan. Washington County is buttoning up the transit development plan and then embarking on the countywide transit study. So we're staying tight, just thinking about, growth, new needs, new solutions we've identified as we're doing this work. And then I also want to mention that I mentioned connections to high capacity transit. I didn't talk a lot about some of the other modes that were on that spectrum related to, buses, shuttles, and other things like that. We're going to be working on scoping an access to transit study now for a post-RTP study, so that once we have this real backbone of the network reestablished, because we'll have new corridors based on rapid bus, we'll be able to look at those connections more holistically. And so that'll be something we'll fold into Chapter 8 of the RTP, and then we'll pick up once the RTP is adopted. So I'm basically also planning my work plan for the next couple of years at the same time that we're doing this work. Next slide, please. And then just a little bit about what we're actually doing. The high capacity transit strategy identifies corridors where a higher quality of service would provide the most benefit to the most people, and then categorizes those corridors by their readiness for investment. And we want to update that by addressing new policy questions around the future. I've mentioned some emerging trends and rapid bus in particular, but there are many others, just how we've grown and changed, and just transit generally has grown and changed. And then we also want to be thinking about that as we re-envision what high capacity transit looks like as far as a vision for the network in the region. And then also create a pipeline of corridor investments. So we want to build on the work we've done around to date and thinking about community priorities to clearly articulate what's next to make us competitive for federal funding. There's a lot of opportunities with IIJA funding, especially around rapid bus and small starts. And thank you. We have a working group that we're working with, as well as a project management team. So our project management team includes staff from both Metro and TriMet. It's really a partnership between our two agencies in this work. And then we're also working with all the partners you can see here, including from Vancouver across the way, and also Washington County as well. And just
yeah,
please,
good.
please.
If that's it, thanks, Ellie. Oh, but there's more.
Sorry, there's a little bit more. There's only a couple more slides. The work is organized. There's 4 main major milestones here. The framework that I mentioned a little bit already, the vision that I talked about, that corridor tiering where we're grouping them by readiness, and then a report that brings it all together. There are those are really tied to the RTP phases you can see on the bottom. And that's how we're organizing our touch points with community, and also where we're proposing to come back to the county coordinating committees for updates as well. And the next slide. And we're, as part of that, we just revised our engagement strategy. We're really excited to have some contracts or a proposal out for contracts with community-based organizations to compensate them for our time, helping get some feedback on the work that we're doing. We're also, to kind of minimize our impact, summarizing all of what we've heard about transit through many other outreach efforts over the past 5+ years to feed into that. And we'll have some more information soon, as we've heard some feedback already on some folks to reach out to and across the region, and then we'll have more information coming soon. Next slide. And then there's just a little bit more about, I mentioned all the other things we're considering. There's a number of other things that we're folding into our policy and evaluation work to consider as far as just how things have changed and best practices. Next slide.
Too many slides.
These. And then this is the last one, just so that we have our website launched. We have some RTP activities, like a survey launching this month, and some more listening sessions that'll be happening in the fall, plus some HCT specific outreach will be happening in the fall as well. And then we will, I actually will present to JPAC soon this month, and then we'll return in October, which is when we might propose to come back to you if it makes sense as a next step. And with that, that's all I had for you today. And I'm interested in hearing your feedback.
Thanks for the presentation, Allie. I see some questions queued up. I'll jump right into those. Garrett, looks like you're first.
Oh, and I think the mayors were on first.
Mayor Schneider, he relinquished.
Okay. Thank you for the presentation. I have to be honest that I think both myself and my entire community are quite going to be quite confused about the bus rapid transit part of this component. I spent the first 2+ years of my time in elected office begging TriMet and Metro leaders to use bus rapid transit for the Southwest Corridor, and in many public meetings was basically told that was impossible, couldn't do the job, wouldn't do the job, was totally ineffective at what needed to happen. The only way to do this was to build light rail. And the reason I share that is you guys are going to have a lot of explaining to do, because I don't even understand it now, how that's consistent with the reality that you're describing. And my community will be much more confused than me, because I have a brain that can flexibly realize things change, but many of them, especially the ones who wrote our charter and our charter provisions that are now in our charter by citizen petition that require that we get a public vote to do anything to support high capacity transit. And that includes, I'm quoting out of the charter, basically any right of way that would be for the exclusive use of a bus. And if that's within 5 miles of our city even. So I guess I want to just remind leaders at Metro and TriMet about that provision specifically related to Tigard, and then also say that I think everyone along the Southwest Corridor is going to be super confused by bus rapid transit's a great thing, let's do this, blah, blah, blah. I mean, we literally had it hammered into our heads that that was absolutely not an option in the Southwest Corridor.
Thanks, Jason. Tim?
Can I just respond to that quickly,
Sure.
if
Allie,
you don't mind?
If you got a quick one, that'd be great.
Okay, I will just say, and Allie, feel free to chime in here. As part of this process, we're not reevaluating the preferred mode for these different high capacity transit corridors, because that does kind of presuppose the NEPA process that we would have to go through for looking at future corridors. So we're not just looking at the map saying, okay, it makes sense to do light rail here and bus rapid transit here, because that kind of gets it in advance of that process that does have to go underway. It's looking at the readiness for high capacity transit on a lot of these corridors throughout the region. So will not be moving forward saying, okay, we're taking a new look at Southwest Corridor and we're going to do bus rapid transit, but really just looking at the criteria for future high capacity transit over time. And so hopefully that will ease some of the confusion, though, yes, there is a lot happening with transit right now. I know Washington County has their own transit study underway. You'll hear more from us about Forward Together and our restoration of service and where that should go. But this is really kind of looking at the long-term need for future high capacity transit. So Mayor, we're happy to keep coordinating with you on that as well. And I'm not sure if Allie wants to weigh in, but I know that's one thing we've heard very strongly throughout this planning process. And it's really just to make sure we're thinking about and have updating the policy for some of the potential for bus rapid transit and enhanced transit opportunities.
Thanks, Tara. Yeah, I would just say that we will be looking at mode opportunity. So it's just like Tara said, we'll be looking at some places where that might be more supportive of light rail or more supportive of rapid bus. And it goes exactly to your point, Mayor, that some places there's a toolbox of transit tools and strategies, and there are definitely places that are much better for light rail based on their topography, where it's traveling to, what the needs are, and certain places that are much more supportive of rapid bus. Especially rapid bus tends to do better in areas where there's a lot of activity and they're kind of the stations are a little bit different, so there's a little bit more access to stations. So it's not a tool that can always be used in all cases.
Thank you. Tim?
Thanks. And thanks for the presentation. This is really good information. So I had a couple questions here. You mentioned an access study that you'll be working on. And I'm just curious what that's going to look like. And when you talk about access, to give you an example, in Sherwood, if you talk to people out here, they would say we have zero access to any kind of transit because to get to the work centers that people work in, it's just not convenient. They have to change buses. It takes a long time, so most people end up driving. I love the word rapid in that option, because I think that's what people are looking for here. But when you're looking at that access study, is it focused on existing routes? Or are you looking at the region where people need to get to and what that might look like in the future? And again, I would extend it outside the metro area. We got people coming out of Yamhill County. I know I'm a soapbox on that, but I'll continue to mention it. But I'm just curious what that's going to look like. And because that gets to the future, right? Because you talk a lot about corridors and what we need for the different corridors. There might be new corridors in the future based on those needs, right? And I'm just wondering what that looks like.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Yeah, we will be looking at new corridors. There are some constraints that we have already. We are starting with the network vision in the 2018 RTP and this is for the high capacity transit strategy, those corridors. And we're looking at what we can evaluate that would basically sort of get upgraded to high capacity transit. So there's that's future corridors. So it's where frequent bus is planned, but doesn't exist today. And that's what the sort of universe that we're going to be evaluating. And there's sort of a two-step process. We're looking at doing an initial screen and then a much more broad evaluation. And that's how we'll arrive at the new network vision. And so that will include new corridors, because those aren't just the ones that have been considered for high capacity transit in the past, or even the enhanced transit concept, to the first question. But the second question on what does access look like? Yes, that one will be more broad, because we will have brought up these new corridors for high capacity transit that weren't on the map before. And now we'll have new places that we'll be thinking about connections to it. And so we want to be sure to build off of Washington County has done a ton of work on this already, really around building out, new shuttles with ride connection and looking at needs even in agricultural areas for shuttles. So we want to build off of that and be thinking about, and I'm still working on this so that's still room room for improvement and still a little bit fuzzy, but wanting to think about what I talked about the toolbox. We have a suite of tools. What are the best tools to use in different areas based on the needs and land uses that we can expand the network more broadly? So that would include, smaller modes, in particular, but a little bit more broad look at some of what access looks like. And as part of that, we're going to have another working group put together, and that one will include some of the agencies that you mentioned, all of the smaller agencies that are at the regional boundary. They will be included as part of that. As part of this work, we're going to do one presentation, I think, or maybe a couple if they'll have us back to that group that meets regularly. But there'll be a much bigger part of the access to transit study.
Great. Thank you very much.
Garrett.
Thank you, Mayor. I have two items, and of course, I'm going to make some comments, and we don't have to discuss them online, but yeah, I'll have communications with staff afterwards. First of all, in terms of corridors, nobody's mentioned Highway 99 as a potential corridor. This is going to need particular study. Money has not been allocated for Highway 99. As you know, there's about 1,000 new units going in that are going to need to use Highway 99. This is something that we just have been ignoring for years, and this is important to Sherwood, this is important to Tigard, has quite a bit of impact to Tualatin as well. So that's one thing I'm going to look for in going forward. The other one has to do with, and it always makes me laugh when you talk about commuter rail as high capacity transit, and you mention West. That is probably the most expensive single person transportation option that I've ever seen. However, what I would like to know is what are we going to do moving forward to see if and whether it's possible to make that into a usable high capacity transit. Right now, if you know, maybe one or two people ride it per train. And although it extends to Wilsonville, which is a great idea, there's the question of whether in fact you can develop a reliable transportation system on private railroad tracks, because it's not usable in odd hours, which makes it difficult these days for people to use it unless they're commuting during very specific hours. So that is going to need a particular study so that it can connect the cities of Tigard, Beaverton, and Tualatin, and Wilsonville in a much more effective way. So I hope those things are something that I will see more of going forward.
Thank you so much, Councillor. I'm excited that Highway 99 is on the universe that we're looking at. So I'm looking forward to providing some more information on that in the future. I don't have a ton right now. And then as far as Wes, one of the other things we're going to do with this work is identify additional areas for study as post-RTP items similar to that access to transit study. And I think that's wonderful feedback about Wes improvements. We'll look at some operational improvement recommendations as part of this study, but I think that's one area we could look more closely at in the future.
Mayor Beatty.
I just want to echo Councillor Rosenthal's thoughts on West. Beaverton is particularly interested in this topic, and so I want to encourage you to reach out to our staff. But our employment area, one of our few areas, West goes right by, and there's no stop. So it goes all the way to Beaverton Central, which is really great. But when we're talking about our employment zone, having a stop added at Beaverton at 5th and Western, or at 5th where it crosses down to Western, would be really helpful for us in encouraging people to get off there. It could serve as a gateway for us into our industrial area. We brought in a team to kind of look at that entire area for us, and I wanted to get them on West so they could look at it as part of our consulting project, because it only runs in the weirdest hours. We couldn't get our consultants to even write it to look. I see it as an asset to us. It's already been invested in. So just bring us along in the process. But we too are interested in West because it already goes through our downtown. It's already providing services, and we think we can help make it a more valuable asset.
Mayor Fitzgerald.
Thank you, Chair. Regarding Wes, I think those are great ideas. Anything that we can do to make it more usable and desirable for people working in Beaverton to use it. I do ride it quite a bit, and Many times now it's getting to be quite full at certain times of day. It did have a large ridership when we had a call center in Wilsonville, and they moved away. But I wanted to say that I know this isn't the focus of this particular effort, but I believe Wes was originally designed to go all the way to Salem. And so ending it where it was not the original idea, not a great plan. And so I just wanted to put a vote in for how great it would be to make all the improvements that have been suggested and have it go all the way to Salem if we have a place to look at that option. Thank you.
Thanks, Julie. I can't believe that Mayor Callaway hasn't jumped in and talked about serving his newly growing city in South Hillsborough that's going to be, you know, twice the size of Cornelius when he's done. I can't believe we don't need to look at something coming out of there, maybe going up to the largest single employer in the state.
Those discussions are already happening, trust me.
Okay, good. I'm just casting light on it. Thank you. All right. Well, anything else for the good? We're a little we're way long on time today. Ali, thanks for the presentation. Stephen?
Yep, Chair, I was just going to suggest we are running about 25 minutes behind schedule, and so I think Chris was just checking in with our next presenter to find out if it's possible that we might bring this item back at a future meeting.
The Metro High injury corridor one and skip that this term?
Correct. We think that might still be ripe next month. And that would give us time to go ahead and have a good discussion about the highway tolling plan and congestion pricing, which is sort of time sensitive for getting some comments back.
Well, let's even if it isn't able to be redone, let's jump over to number 8 then and do the draft Oregon Highway Plan tolling and congestion. And if maybe it'll fly through fast and we won't we'll have time for the other one, but yeah, I don't think so. The draft Oregon toll and congestion pricing plan amendment for goal 6 in the Oregon Highway Plan is in your packet. I hope if you had time to read it. Letters from the packet from City of Tualatin and C4 on the draft policy. Chris will introduce the policy and then turn it over to Mayor Bubenik, who has been involved in both Tualatin and the C4 to share his thoughts. Chris?
Yes, thank you. And so yes, this is going to be on your agenda for Thursday at JPACT. And if you could go to the next slide, please, Teresa. So today what we wanted to do is just have a discussion about the toll plan amendment and the toll amendment, sorry, and identify any comments you want to share at JPACT later this week. And then last month you asked that you'd like to include a comment letter to ODOT about this and also comments on the low-end control report. And so we'll be working on that based on your comments today and bring that back to you in September. They're due, those letters are due September 15th. And then also share information and identify any questions for ODOT. I have asked if ODOT staff is available to be pinged for a question if that comes up. If we could quickly answer a question you have and not drag it out, that's usually efficient. So it's just an overview. And I'm just going to, next slide, please. Not being the expert that the ODOT toll folks are on this, I just want to highlight that this is a this is an amendment. It's an amendment to an existing part of the Oregon Highway Plan called Goal 6, and it really elaborates on tolling and the introduction, and how this could be used not just for this project in our region, but potential future projects statewide. It talks about the road pricing objectives in terms of how to utilize tolling and achieving outcomes, and to both fund infrastructure and manage demand. It talks about a section in here about including addressing climate goals and including that, and shifting travel on the freeway, on the highways, state highways, to more off-peak hours and to other modes. And then it also covers a little bit about policies for establishing rate structures and pricing, exemptions and discounts. And I think the exemptions and discounts you talked about before your last meeting here with the comments about the 200% of federal poverty and 400% and how that might go about. And the need to set the tolling rates to achieve the outcomes that were identified in your for the tolling. And then it also talks about providing discounts or exemptions for certain behaviors, to try to encourage people. There's also a section about use of revenue, which is generally very controversial. And the policy calls for meeting the revenue obligations first, and then working about prioritizing any additional net revenue and addressing impacts in neighborhoods and within a corridor for mitigation. And then finally, there's a structure on infrastructure and management. And this includes things that you've talked about before about the need for there to be interoperability and making it easy to use and monitor over time. So it's kind of just an overview. I'm sure you've all read this in your packet. So it's double spaced, so it's easy to read. And then based on I just wanted to, before I turn this over to Mayor Bubenek, I just wanted to highlight a couple of the things that you've said before and that come up again in this policy to kind of get you started. The fact that the tolling and the pricing structure is intended to both raise revenue for investments and manage demand. That's something that came from the legislature, and it was repeated in House Bill 3055. There's a lot of discussion in this document about how diversion is defined, and there's been some pushback on ODOT for defining it too narrowly. You all have said before, diversion is happening now. So the question is, how do you know what's due to the tolling? And then how is mitigated? You all have commented before about the need to mitigate the impacts, and this version narrows sort of the geographic area that those could be mitigated in a bit narrowly. So those are a couple of areas where there's been a lot of comment on. And you've also mentioned that the need for commitments for multimodal investments, especially transit, to provide options. You all know the limitations on our Constitution for dedicating revenue that's generated by motor vehicles for transit. So this policy can't come out right and say they're going to spend the money on that, but how can that still be strengthened as a source of discussion? And then other points that you all have brought up before that are applicable again here is your support for addressing the needs of the vulnerable population, both rate setting and mitigation. And then something that could be emphasized more is the need for ongoing engagement, both at the local and regional level. And the fact that each of these projects are different. I-205 is a different project than even the I-5 project. And so how to recognize the needs of these, it can't be too cookie cutter because each facility is different. That's come up. And then again, this came up big time in the EMAC recommendations, Equity Mobility Advisory Committee, about the need to monitor and have accountability and some process for making modifications over time. I only bring this up as kind of a trailer, a preview of the discussions ahead about the topics in this ODOT policy. And I would like to turn to Mayor Bubenek. There is or should be letters in your packet that were from the city of Tualatin already on this point, and he's been more involved in it. And I guess just so that we can get rid of the screen share, I guess I could just go through this. This next Thursday, there'll be a discussion at JPAC. Next week will be the first Regional Toll Advisory Committee meeting. We haven't seen the agenda for that, but you can bet they're going to talk about tolling. And then for Mayor Jones, your Northwest Act agenda is scheduled to talk about tolling. And then there, September 12th, that's your next, that's your next WCCC meeting. And per your last request about wanting to submit something to ODOT, we can bring a letter back to you for your consideration at that meeting to submit it. And JPAC may also be considering sending a letter. This will be something that's discussed next Thursday. And then September 15th is the deadline. And then I had TBD down here because I don't really know beyond the deadline for submitting the letters in terms of next steps. I don't have all all of that, or all of the other local jurisdiction agency comment letters, who else is going to be submitting. So it's kind of a super quick run through, but just to kind of give you a flavor of this and what's coming up next. So I'm going to, Teresa, I think if you quit sharing the screen, we could see Mayor Bubenik and ask if he would like to comment on the letter that's Bubenik in your packet.
All right. Thanks, Chris. In the interest of time, I'll be super brief. One of our big problems with the document is the definition of diversion. It's super prescriptive. One of the things they're talking about is they're only going to look 1 mile out from the route for diversion. So picture 205, they're going to look 1 mile on each side in terms of diversion, which, you know, was not going to help 99E at all beyond a mile. And they're searching certain segments of Borland Road and West Lynn that'll be impacted. So that we want to know where they came up with this 1 mile corridor idea. And because we're going to foresee diversion way beyond just the 1 mile pin on the map, if you will, from I-205. As far as dollars, as Chris just said, they will not drop 1 penny into diversion costs until other costs are recouped. So we might be having diversion issues around 205 for years until they fund the dollars spent on the bridge, on the Abernathy Bridge, which is a concern for us, that the diversion will have to be dealt with, you know, sooner than later. There's a whole segment about the how they feel that you should not be using I-205 for anything less than a 3 mile trip. And quite a few people use it on the, you know, our end of Tualatin, use 205 to get back and forth from West Lynn and Lake Oswego because it's quicker and it's easier, but they're going to discourage us from doing that. And our, you know, our fellow Clackamas County residents in West Lynn and Lake Oswego, they have to go one exit time sometimes just to go back and forth through town because there is no other alternative. So this 3 mile minimum is, we're wondering where the heck they came up with that. And as finally, as Chris mentioned, support of low income, disadvantaged folks, they still aren't getting into very much specifics on how we're going to support that. I remember last month we talked about is, you know, will there be a cap per day on how much people pay for, and we can't get an answer on that. So I'm looking forward to the meeting next week. I got the invite. I think there's 35 agencies on this committee, which I was shocked by. That was so big. I'm talking with a facilitator tomorrow morning. I guess they're having someone professionally facilitate these meetings. So I'll report back how they go. But go ahead and take a look at our letter. Clackamas County, the C4 already sent 1 letter in. They're going to send another one in because obviously Clackamas County is very, very concerned about this. And we're just echoing some of the concerns they have, especially, you know, on 205, because they haven't figured it out yet. I think they're getting there, but they're not hearing, you know, the diversion, low income, and definition of corridors has us very paranoid and limits what we would consider diversion, what ODOT will consider diversion.
Thanks, Frank. Jason?
I just want to add to the thinking, and I think I made this comment at the Region 1 ACT meeting, not at WCCC, but if I'm repeating myself from last time, just whip me in the head, I guess. I think ODOT, and this got me thinking, because, you know, we're thinking about diversion in the way that we care about, right, as local jurisdictions. That comment about the 3 miles, you know, trips that are 3 miles or shorter shouldn't, I think where ODOT's coming from is they don't think those trips should be, those should be local trips in their mind. It's like opposite of diversion, if you can think of it that way. It's stuff that ends up on the regional network that shouldn't be in their mind. So just if that helps people conceptually think about what they're getting at there, I think, you know, if I'm sort of trying to think about the way we think about it and then thinking about it the way they are, that's what I think is happening there, if that helps anybody.
No, Jason, I think it's very clear, right? If you think about something as very easy and pragmatic, and Frank talked about getting on and off because you can't get across the river or you can't get, there isn't another way. But I mean, it's like, if you think about the Portland example, it's like, well, why would you get on at one exit and get off 2 exits down or one exit down in Portland instead of just going out to Martin Luther King Boulevard? That's the major, you know, 99E. That should be the way you're traveling if you're trying to get within Portland. But we all know, if any of us have ever driven it, people get on and off, exit to exit, all throughout the I-5 corridor. And that's part of the concern or demonstrated that why you're not supposed to have so many exits so close together. So, Tara? Is it Tara or Tara? I keep messing it up.
Tara.
Tara.
Got it right, I think, the first time.
It's going to be 20 times before I get it right.
I know, I don't like to spend my entire Zoom meetings just correcting people. So anyway, thank you, Mayor, for the comments and for everyone who's been tracking this. I just wanted to weigh in that we have heard ODOT is very much accepting edits and suggested changes, especially on those topics related to corridor and diversion. And so I'm sure that will likely come up at JPAC this week. And in terms of the timeline, there will be revisions proposed. And so this is not the final amendment that's moving forward. They are accepting changes, and I think it has a few more months before OTC needs to take action on this. And so I just wanted to clarify that point, because I think a lot of us partners are thinking about what definition of corridor or diversion might make sense, what might better get to the issues many of us are bringing up with concerns related to potential diversion. So there'll be lots more opportunities to talk about that. But thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Tara. Definitely nobody's brought it up, but 219 and 47 are the west side bypasses for 217, right? Hall Boulevard, Mayor Beatty, it's, you've got full congestion on there because 217 is literally parked, stopped, right? And Hall Boulevard at least is moving, but it's bumper to bumper. And I think the other one I think it's in Frank's letter, but he didn't bring it up. The highway is the safest place to drive. And I'm really concerned if we're causing further diversion than we already have into the least safe place, which is through our town centers. If you look at poor Gaston, what's happened to them because of Yam Hill and people coming up to work, right? Canby, Newburgh, Yam Hill are these great growing metropolitan centers because there aren't enough homes in our communities to house everybody that wants to work here, or they want a different lifestyle than living in town tight as we are.
Jeff, you bring up a really interesting point about Hall Boulevard, and Matt, I guess this, or others, maybe this is a question for you, but Mayor Beatty and I will care a lot about the answer to this. Because it's technically a state highway, please don't tell me that that's not considered diversion in the analysis right now.
Sorry, I'm not able to, I'm gonna have to defer. I don't know if Garrett Pryor has joined us. He might be able to answer that a little more clearly.
Garrett was unable, and we may have somebody from ODOT that has not been able to join us.
Okay, so when Jeff said that, I was like, well, Hall's actually a state highway.
Right.
Kind
Hall
of.
Boulevard, 219, which is 2 lanes skidding down the side of Nehalem Ridge, right? And then 47 are all bypassed. They're all state highways with gravel painted on the side of them so you can have a fog line. So if you could look into that for us, Matt, that'd be great.
Will do.
Other questions, comments? Well, that got us back on agenda.
I would just like to, I'd like to echo what Tara said. I have also heard that ODOT is very open to edits and revisions, and this will continue to be discussed at JPAC. And we'll be continuing to listen and present a draft letter that, since you've asked to submit a draft letter as well, to pull something together for you that highlights some of the key points you've talked about and others that may emerge.
Thank you. Okay, well, that takes us on to MPAC. Do we have an MPAC update?
Yeah, the impact update is basically the same as what it was before. And if you attend the next impact meeting, you probably will get a feeling of deja vu. For the August 24th meeting, an introduction to the high capacity transit strategy update for the 2023 RTP. One of the presenters will be Allie Holmquist. So that's what's on the agenda for the 24th. Moving into the fall, September and October. Excuse me. The Todd Program Strategic and Work Plan Update, revisiting shelter sightings, some more of the issues regarding homelessness, and backed by popular demand, the high capacity transit strategy update. So that's September and then October. I'm not going to say it again, but there will be more of the climate analysis for the 2023 RTP. State funding for addressing homelessness. It says one-time state funding. That, as I said, is October, probably the last meeting before the election. And shelter siting updates again. And then after then November and December, I think that's pretty much up in the air. There are nothing really shocking there, but it will obviously be impacted by the results of November 8th. So there you go. Thank you.
Thanks, Pete. Steve, do you have it for JPAC?
I do. So obviously we're going to be talking about the options with regional flexible funds that we spent quite a bit of time talking about. And as Pete acknowledged, he and I are slow learners. So we're going to hear the high capacity transit strategy again. And then we'll also be spending time on ODOT's plan amendment, highway plan amendment, and the tolling policy.
Great. Well, other business that takes us to anything from the Region 1 ACT reps that you want to share with us? Caught you flat-footed?
Yeah, you did. I'm thinking forward, and my Rolodex is or my 386 is not spinning well backwards. I'll see if I can think of something though.
I tell everybody I don't have random access memory, I have DAT. So I actually have to roll the digital audio tape back and see what I remember, and then I can roll it back to where it was. Yeah. So we got Regional 1 ACT coming up. We got the RTP policy, obviously, safe and healthy urban arterials, summer outreach, and then anticipated future agenda topics, right? Climate friendly, equitable communities implementation. I know some of us are involved in other actions on that particular topic, but that's going to be an interesting one. MSTIP 2328. We'll have monthly check-ins and plans for that through November of 22. Countywide transit study, you heard some talk about that. And the Metro's TV Highway Hope, helping obtain prosperity for everyone grant. And then obviously ODOT's West Side Multimodal Improvement Study. Anything else? Oh, Tara.
I'll add one more thing to that list in case our team hasn't gotten back to you yet. We are continuing to work on our Forward Together service hours restoration planning. So as you all know, we're still facing our operator shortage, but working to plan for the restoration of those service hours. And so our Forward Together planning process, which Grant O'Connell came and spoke with you about a few months ago, we will be this fall coming back with a preferred alternative for the future of our service network that we will be able to restore service over time. And so we'd like to get that back in front of all of you as we start planning for how to restore that service and how the network will change. So we'll work with you on the best time to get that on the agenda, but that is just one other wrinkle in the many transit related communications coming out this fall. So we're coordinating closely with Metro on their high capacity transit study that's underway while working on our very real-time service cuts that we're having to implement, as well as planning for service restoration as we bring more operators on board. So just wanted to put that on your radar that we're hoping to come back to talk with you all more about that as well. And I'll work on best timing with the team.
Thanks, Tara. I don't know if you have an update on it or if Mayor Beatty has something. I know they reached out to me from TriMet about the Beaverton ones, and I put a pretty scathing response in the email asking you to come back and explain basically how you were not going to eliminate that service, but you were going to change it because we have people that are counting on that for their day-to-day livelihood. And I don't know how everybody else feels. My feelings on it is the bus service is just that, is a public service. This is not a business. We're not trying to be profitable. It's a public service. And when we cut lines, we absolutely make impacts on people. And I thought it should be very easy to reach out to the ridership when I'm told there's 3 or 5 or 8 people riding those routes. Should be very easy to figure out how we're going to sustain that system, if it's truncated hours, if it's moving down to vans from buses. Is there any word on whether we're going to get a reply or feedback on that?
In terms of those specific bus lines that were cut, so those
Well, they're supposed to be cut next month is what I hear.
Yes.
September.
Yes, so those cuts have moved forward in the short term, and we are conducting the Forward Together and plan is identifying how to restore service hours and how to reallocate service. And so that, as you've heard, is not just restoring service on all the same lines where they were, but really looking at how demand has changed and how we can best meet the needs of riders where they are now. So if no one has responded to those inquiries, I will make sure that our team talks with you all about that, and very much apologize again if those communications have not been followed up on. But we have conducted a full service analysis with a Title VI and low-income focus to make sure that we are continuing to serve the riders that need it most and able to restore service as our operator shortage is addressed.
No, it's I think it's a real thing. I don't know if anybody else is interested in it, but I would probably be, it's the engineer in me looking at the bus, and we're talking about high capacity transit and with all these things. I had the chance to ride the Max the other day, and I would tell you that it is not the worst experience I had on it, but it was the filthiest experience I've had on it. The Max was filthy. The actual seats were torn up. The actual train was dirty, and there was only 8 or 9 of us on it during the day. So I think really, if you could share with us, or at least with me, I don't know if anybody else is interested, what ridership kind of looks like as far as through a day. And we've heard about the West being, the most expensive single person vehicle transit system. Maybe some information on the West and some of our local bus routes and how they're really getting used. Because every time I'm commuting in the morning and I pass the buses that's picking up people, there's only 5 or 8 people on the bus. So I'm internally having a hard time moving forward, looking at these high capacity transit answers and these other things, when it doesn't feel like we're getting utilization on the system we already have. So is that something you could bring to us? I don't know. Is anybody else interested in that information? Tim's
Absolutely.
definitely, and Frank is,
Yes.
and I'm seeing enough hands to make a quorum on that. So
Yep.
could you work with Chris and figure out how you can bring us something? I mean, I'm thinking the simple graph that says, oh, look, it's morning rush hour and all these people are on, and then it drifts out through the day, and then all of a sudden, and you're looking at TV Highway, you're looking at all these other ones. Maybe there's something you could share with us that help us better understand what's going on, because my individual samples are not highly supportive of
I know.
buying more buses and more toys and other things.
Well, I can't recall if we did share the results of the existing conditions assessment from Forward Together with this group, or if we came before that had been completed, that really shows how ridership has changed during the pandemic and like how it is, the peaks are not as as high,
I think
but
maybe we might need a little bit of zooms in, and
Yep.
maybe that would be more practical if you took some of the local routes that we all know and love, like you took TV Highway, right? All of us,
one
from
of our highest
Beaverton to Forest
ridership
Grove,
routes.
right, that would maybe this is the best example, right? But then if you took some of the other routes in other areas, I'm sorry, Tim, you don't get any service, so no graph for you. But maybe you could do that, reach in and give us some specific examples and give us something very tactical that we could look at and could more easily digest that and go, oh, I see how the ridership is. I see where the times are. And then, hey, here's the overlay of it showing where it was pre-pandemic. Oh, we're right back to it. Or, wow, we're really not there. So.
Absolutely. Well, I can at least point along the executive summary for the short term. Here's where we're at, and at least share the good news that ridership has been going up since February, and we are right now at about, I think, 58% of pre-pandemic ridership, which is about on par with national trends, but that it really has been every month going up, and we're seeing increases. And so we can do some spotlights on which rides or which routes have continued to have the highest ridership. And this is very much what is informing our future service planning. So I'll at least get the link with the really short summary of what we know now that you all have before we can come back and talk about that, because we are seeing some encouraging trends with ridership, and we are very focused on looking at our existing service and restoration of that. And that's what our planning is focused on. So it's a complementary metro leading the long-term high capacity transit vision with our focus on the very near term restoring service.
Thanks, Tara. Chris?
Yeah, I just wanted to add on that we did bring, Tara, I'm not sure you were at the table then, but we did bring in your staff to talk about the existing conditions at the beginning of the study. But I think Mayor Delane's point about zooming in so that there's better understanding of how specific routes are affected and better inform your route cutting would be really helpful. I just want to remind folks that we have penciled in bringing back TriMet staff I think next September or October to talk about what they've learned from this dive into future trends and how it shapes restructuring of transit services, how based on what we know now, they may be looking at less of a radial or, what other changes in the system. So we've got that as soon as you're ready, Tara, to bring that back. Or I think maybe September, October, or something like that. So that more to come on that one.
Tim, did you have a quick thing?
Oh, I was just going to amplify what you said, Jeff, about being able to drill down a little bit and look at that. Jeff, we do have some buses that come into town, but our ridership, I have the same experience. I'll sit at the coffee shop and watch 4 buses go by in a half hour and there's no one on them. And I don't believe that's because people don't want that service in Sherwood, that it's just not going to the places that they need to get to. And that's why I'm really interested in that access study that they're talking about doing to really better understand what those needs are.
Well, and I think it goes to us talking about getting from and to where you need to in a timely fashion, right? If it takes 2 or 3 hours to get from Hillsborough, Cornelius, Forest Grove to Tiger to Tualatin for a job, you kind of have to drive, right? So how do we get a mass transit process that facilitates and supports the destination where people live and where they're working, so we can get them there in something other than single occupancy vehicles?
Absolutely, and you couple that with HB 2001 and the recent regulations that came out of DCLD around parking requirements and street widths and all that. The push is less cars. If we're going to have less cars, cities like Sherwood need transportation options.
Yep. Anything else for the good of the order as we get down the last minute or so? I want to thank everybody for hanging out. These meetings are long. We cover a lot of topics. I want to thank everybody for keeping the energy up, making it through it. Chris, any closing? Don't we have another? We didn't have an August one. We have a September one.
We got a break. September. They're giving us August off. We have our next meeting September 12th, and the workshop for the next JPAC workshop will be September 19th.
Yeah. Okay.
I think. No,
That sounds right. It'd
26.
be, it's usually the week
26.
after. Yeah.
I think it's 26. Yeah, they moved it.
Oh, 2 weeks later. Okay.
Yeah, I think that's right.
All right, everybody. Thank
And
you very
Okay,
much.
thank
Chair,
you.
Yeah,
Chair, if I
Stephen, you
could-
got something?
Just really quickly, I just wanted to let folks know Mayor Callaway just sent the email out for the TPAC alternate voting. Just a reminder for folks to please reply back and let us know.
Get your votes in. Don't be Florida. Don't vote early. Don't vote often.
Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.
Bye.